This isn't just a truck. It's a coffin for the life I buried. If you passed me on the street today, you'd see a man who looks put together. Clean shave, fresh boots, a truck with my company's emblem on the side. A house that smells like actual breakfast instead of burnt instant coffee. People shake my hand now like my name carries weight, as if I've always been someone important. But a few years ago, I lived in silence, real silence, the kind that makes you question if you've already died and just haven't realized it. My name is Lucas Harlow, and once upon a time, I slept on a thin camping cot inside a storage unit. My entire life condensed into a space smaller than most walk-in closets. Concrete floor, metal walls that groaned in winter, a single battery lamp hanging from a hook. Stack of canned soup I opened with a pocket knife and ate cold, because the idea of lighting a flame in there felt too risky. Every night the buzz of the ceiling light outside the corridor was my lullaby, that constant electric hum reminding me what failure sounded like. People think when life collapses, it's dramatic, screaming, smashing, storming out, but destruction doesn't always crash. Sometimes it pours slowly, filling your house, then your lungs, until one day you realize you're drowning in a place that used to feel safe. That's how it was for me, a quiet drowning. I wasn't born unlucky, or stupid, or reckless. I grew up in Grayford, Pennsylvania, a town coated in sawdust and small-town routine, built around one place, Hawthorne Lumber and Supply. My father, Ryan, worked there until the day they zipped him into a black bag and called it an unforeseeable accident. I was 7. I remember the funeral mostly by what I didn't understand. Why people whispered, why my mother stared through walls for weeks, and why everyone kept saying instantaneous. As if the speed of death made it less offensive. My Uncle Miles, Dad's brother, didn't believe the official story for a second. He was a combat veteran, served 2 tours overseas, and carried that look soldiers sometimes bring home, eyes that never stop scanning. Every holiday, after enough beer loosened his restraint, he'd start hinting that my father hadn't simply been at the wrong place at the wrong time. He knew something, Miles would whisper, leaning close enough that I could smell hops on his breath. People don't die like that by coincidence. Adults would hush him, call it trauma, call it paranoia, but Miles didn't laugh it off. He'd go quiet after that, not defeated, just contained. When my mother passed from an unexpected stroke while I was in college, Miles drifted further from society. He sold what little he owned and disappeared west. Someone said he bought land near the Wyoming wilderness. Someone else said he lived out of a tent for years. The truth was nobody really checked. Meanwhile, I stayed, worked, survived. I met Mara Sullivan in high school. She was the girl whose smile made boys idiots and girls jealous. She had that effortless charm built from good looks, easy confidence, and parents who thought she was born for more than Grayford could offer. Against all odds, she noticed me. The quiet kid with worn-in boots and a truck that died twice a week. She saw something in me, or at least she made me believe she did. We dated through senior year. We talked about leaving, chasing something bigger. But life has a way of trading dreams for responsibilities, and when Mara decided she wanted something real, I took that as the biggest blessing of my life. We married young. Paper streamers, folding chairs, and the cheapest caterer we could find. It was perfect, or maybe I was just too in love to see any cracks forming. I got promoted at the mill slowly but steadily. From grunt work loading trucks to machine operation to eventually overseeing shifts. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Honest work that stained your clothes and left your muscles aching. The kind that makes you feel like you earned your sleep. We bought a modest house. 2 stories, peeling paint, old furnace, but ours. We stripped wallpaper, repainted rooms, patched drywall, and built a home from the inside out. Mara picked soft yellow for the kitchen, said mornings needed sunlight even when the weather disagreed. When the actual sunlight hit those walls, it felt like hope lived with us. Our son, Caleb, arrived 2 winters later, a blizzard baby. Roads closed, power flickering, the entire town frozen in place. 3 years after, our daughter Harper came quietly, eyes wide and curious like she'd been here before. I used to think those moments, those tiny seconds where everything felt right, were guarantees. They weren't. They were warnings I mistook for promises. When old man Hawthorne retired, he handed the reins to his son Colton, a smooth-talking man with polished shoes and a watch that cost more than my truck. He visited the mill just enough to shake hands and pretend he cared about the people whose sweat paid for his cologne. He'd flash a smile that didn't reach his eyes and talk about profit optimization, which was corporate language for cutting corners without cutting his paycheck. Mara changed around the same time. New perfume, new hair, new clothes. She started making comments about what we didn't have. The house that was too small. The vacations too simple. The life too predictable. She'd come home with opinions that sounded suspiciously informed by someone else, usually someone whose last name happened to be Hawthorne. "You deserve better, Lucas," she'd say. "Colton thinks you could climb higher if you positioned yourself right." I thought she was supporting me. Looking back, she was positioning me. just not in the direction I imagined. Then came the day my entire world cracked. It was a Thursday. I woke up dizzy, nauseous, thought maybe I caught a bug. By noon the room spun enough that I could hardly stand. The foreman insisted I go home before I faceplanted into machinery. Driving was a mistake, but I made it back. Slowly, carefully, gripping the steering wheel like it was my last lifeline. When I turned onto my street, the first thing I saw was a silver luxury sedan parked in my driveway. Sleek, polished, unmistakably expensive. Colton's. I told myself it was business. Something urgent. Something explainable. Denial is anesthesia for the soul, numb enough to walk into your execution without screaming. The front door was locked. We never locked the door during the day. Inside was quiet, unsettlingly so. Then I heard it. Mara's laugh. Not the polite, casual one she used with strangers. The private one I used to think was mine exclusively. I walked up the stairs one slow step at a time. Past photos of Caleb missing teeth. Past Harper in her butterfly Halloween costume. Past our wedding picture where we promised things we didn't understand yet. The bedroom door was partially open. Colton stood near the bed, my bed, adjusting his cufflinks like he was preparing for a meeting. Mara sat at the vanity I built with my own hands, wood sanded for hours, varnished late at night while she slept, wearing a satin robe I'd never seen her in. They weren't panicking, weren't scrambling. They were talking about Europe, about wine with names I couldn't pronounce, about a future that clearly didn't have space for me. Colton slipped past with a tight jaw and averted eyes. He said something about discussing things later, as if he were rescheduling a performance review, not bulldozing my life. Mara didn't cry, didn't plead. She looked relieved. How long? I asked. She didn't flinch. A while. Just like that. A while, as if she were talking about ordering the same coffee for months. She told me she wanted more. More than I could ever provide. She wanted excitement, opportunity, elevation. Words she never used before meeting Colton. She looked at our house and saw limitations. She looked at me and saw failure. I walked out not because I was noble, but because the air inside felt too poisonous to breathe. The next morning I got fired. Budget restructuring, they said. 16 years reduced to a hollow phrase. I could sign and get 2 weeks severance or refuse and get nothing. When I asked if this was about Mara, Colton smiled. That slow, smug smile predators wear when the prey finally sees the trap. I signed. Days later, divorce papers arrived with demands I couldn't meet even if I still had income. The house, the kids, support payments from money I didn't possess. The judge, who'd received campaign donations from Hawthorne, labeled me unstable over one emotional moment. Punching a wall in private after learning my marriage was fraudulent. That was enough to brand me dangerous. So I lost everything. The house, gone. The kids, limited to supervised visits I couldn't afford. Friends evaporated. Family offered sympathy and distance in equal measure. I slept in my truck until cops asked questions. Then in a friend's basement. Then on a different friend's sofa, until drifting became awkward for everyone involved. Eventually, I found the cheapest climate-controlled storage unit I could rent and started living like a ghost who paid rent to stay dead. One night, while sorting through boxes Mara didn't want, your sentimental junk, I found something wedged behind holiday decorations. A brown leather briefcase with my name written in fading marker. Inside, more cash than I'd ever seen. $62,000. Crisp bills bundled tight. But it wasn't the money that changed my life. It was the letter underneath. From Uncle Miles. He wrote as if he knew this moment would come. As if he'd been waiting for me to hit the ground hard enough to look up at the right angle. He told me everything, not in flowery words, but in the plain, brutal truth. My father's death wasn't an accident. It was clearance, removal, the neatest term paperwork can use to hide murder. Because the land my father inherited held mineral rights to a gas deposit worth millions. Rights he refused to sell completely, choosing instead partnership. And partnership made him inconvenient. Miles had spent decades gathering evidence, waiting for the moment the Hawthorns were confident enough to stop watching. He hadn't told me sooner because my connection to him would have lit up their radar. You losing everything, he wrote, was the only thing that made them stop paying attention. Reading his words felt like swallowing ice. He gave me coordinates, directions, a key, evidence. He told me the truth lived in a cabin 2,000 miles away, and it would change everything. He was right. The cabin was real, and inside was a lifetime of collected proof. Photos, bank records, witness interviews, digital recordings, legal documents, organized meticulously. And the part that nearly broke me wasn't the conspiracy against my father. It was the part about Mara. Photos of her at 17 with Colton. Records of payments into an account under her maiden name. Audio files where she called our marriage the assignment. Where Colton reminded her my children were leverage. That night, sitting on a dusty chair with headphones on, listening to her voice speaking about my life like it was a business strategy. something inside me cracked loud enough to hear. But grief turned into clarity. And clarity turned into purpose. I didn't go to the FBI to clear my name. I went because the weight of the truth was too heavy to carry alone. 5 months later, a line of black government SUVs rolled into Grayford. Colton was arrested on the golf course, still holding a whiskey glass. The judge, city officials, people whose names I'd only heard during election cycles, all taken away. And eventually Mara. She called from jail, furious and afraid. Told me I'd ruined the kids' lives. Told me I'd humiliated her. But she never once said she was sorry. The trial made headlines far beyond our town. The lumber dynasty exposed. Decades of corruption unraveled. The gas rights, legally and rightfully, transferred to me. But money wasn't the victory. The victory was the day my kids walked back into my home. Wary, uncertain, carrying betrayal they didn't deserve, and eventually called it home again. Trust doesn't return like a flood. It returns like a drip. Slow, testing, fragile. We rebuilt, not perfectly but honestly. I started Harlow Timber, rebuilt the mill with fair wages, safe practices, transparency. Miles left enough money to start right. Legally, cleanly. Now we work with men who used to dread the morning shift but now take pride in punching in. I still keep that storage unit. Sometimes I sit inside it just to remember the version of me who slept with fear as his blanket. Because rock bottom wasn't a grave. It was an address. And I left when I was ready. Mara once told me I'd die a nobody. Funny how life works, because I died there in that storage unit, but not the way she meant. The man who thought comfort was happiness died. The man who would rather suffer than live a lie survived. And the truth, brutal, cold, freeing truth, built something stronger than the life they tried to script for me. Because freedom isn't found in revenge or money or cleared names. Freedom is standing in the ruins of what they burned and realizing, you're still here, and they aren't.